The views and opinions expressed by the guests and hosts of this program do not necessarily reflect those of Bible Discovery TV and its partners.
Genesis 6 says this, "When men began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit will not contend with man forever, for he is mortal. His days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of men and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, the men of renown." Welcome to Prophecy Times. I'm Matt Bracewell. I'm joined by my co-host, Kyle Hembry.
Hello.
We have a very special guest today, L.A. Marzulli. L.A. Marzulli is an author, lecturer, and filmmaker. He has penned over 8 books, including the Nephilim trilogy, which made the CBA bestsellers list. He received an honorary doctorate for the series from his mentor, Dr. I.D.E. Thomas, who was the provost at Pacific International University. His new series on the trail of the Nephilim is a full-color, oversized book which uncovers startling evidence that there has been a massive cover-up of what he believes are the remains of the Nephilim, the giants mentioned in the Bible. L.A., welcome to Prophecy Times. We're so happy to have you.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure to have you. Okay, through the years, many people have heard about the giants, they've heard about Goliath, they've read Genesis 6, and they've kind of left it there. The church doesn't really talk about it. I wanted to ask you, why do you think that is? And you've written a book on the trail of the Nephilim. Why did you write that book, and what is it about?
Well, on the trail of the Nephilim 1 and 2, there's actually 2 volumes to it. The first one came out about 2 years ago. The second one came out towards the end of 2014. I believe that Genesis 3 is the key to the Bible. And what I mean by that is it basically sets up a seed war, talking about the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. In Genesis 3, we hear the Most High God say very specifically to Adam and Eve who were there, and the serpent, your seed, talking to the serpent, will be at enmity with the seed of the woman. That sets up really the rest of the biblical narrative. I mean, it takes a long time to get to Messiah. I get that. And now where I believe we're in the end times, the last days, and at some point we will see the seed of the serpent literally manifest in the person of the Antichrist. I don't believe the church will be here when that happens, but I think that we're on the window of that. We may get inklings or hints as to who this character is. That remains to be seen. But from Genesis 3, where we're told that there will be a seed war, essentially, that the seed of the serpent will be at enmity, at war, with the seed of the woman, when we go into the Genesis 6, what happens? We see exactly that 3 chapters later. We see the seed war beginning to unfold right before our very eyes. And what we read, you just read it, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward, when the sons of God saw the daughters of men, chose for them wives, went into them, that's in the biblical sense of coitus, and had children by them, which were called the men of renown. What's interesting is this is all written in the Torah. And the Torah is given orally to Moses on Mount Sinai. Here's a timeline, let's say like this. And over here is that Genesis 3, but right after that is Genesis 6, and then following that is the flood of Noah. From Genesis 6, which will be here now, right, to where Moses is getting the Torah from the Most High God on Mount Sinai is hundreds and hundreds of years after the event. So he's getting this dictated to him by the Most High God. And isn't it interesting that if there's only one incursion, then why wouldn't that sentence just read, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, period? But that's not what the text says. In those days and also afterwards, which in my opinion brings us right up into the time of Moses, because Moses knows who's in the promised land. This is, when you really get into it, and I've written about this extensively in my book, The Cosmic Chess Match, it's very interesting. The protocols of the heavenly war between the Most High God and the fallen angels, we are not privy to. We don't know the rules. Gary Stearman said something very interesting recently to me when I was on Prophecy Watchers set about a month ago now. In fact, that's going to be aired this evening. But the bottom line was this. Gary was saying that when there's silence in heaven, the book of Revelation, silence in heaven for a half an hour, no one is worthy to open the scroll. And then the Lamb comes up, which is, of course, Yeshua, Jesus, and opens up the scroll and reads that. Well, Gary believes, as I do, that it's an indictment. It's an indictment against earth. Everything proceeds in the heavenly realm in a very legalistic way. And we're not really privy to that. For instance, let me just give you one thing from a biblical perspective. When the fallen one is tempting Jesus in the wilderness, he offers something. He offers, if you worship me, I'll give you all the kingdoms. All the kingdoms are his to give. That's a given. Well, how is that happening? Because it goes back to the garden where man relinquishes their right, our right as human beings, to the planet. Now the fallen one, the fallen cherub, owns the planet. And he says, all of these are mine to give. And he's right, all of them are his to give. It's a legalistic protocol, which we get sort of an inkling into this. So the bottom line here is that the Nephilim are on the earth in the Genesis 6 account, and also afterwards, when Moses goes into the promised land, guess who's there? The Nephilim tribes. So if that's the case, and this is where our hypothesis comes into play, we believe, as the tribes, the Israeli tribes, the children of Israel, the 12 tribes began to push into the promised land, the Levant, the Nephilim tribes that were there saw what was going on. And remember, these are not human beings. These are hybrid beings, perhaps without souls. We are composed of, human beings are spirit, soul, and body, right? And what if these creatures don't have souls? Now we get into a whole interesting deal. We also know from Scripture and also pseudepigraphical books like the Book of Enoch that the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim became the demonic entities which wander the earth. And in order for them to manifest, they need to inhabit something. Isn't that interesting? So all that being said, as Joshua and Caleb begin to push into the Levant, or the promised land, these Nephilim tribes flee. They begin to disperse, and they run for their lives. Some of them jumped on boats, went out the Red Sea, wound up in the Gulf of Mexico. And which is really interesting, and that sounds like, oh, that's preposterous. No, it's not. Thor Heyerdahl, in his classic movie, or classic book, Ra, and also Kon-Tiki, proved that you can take a papyrus boat and just put a sail on that thing, and the currents will basically take you to the Gulf of Mexico. So isn't that intriguing?
Also, L.A., is it, I've heard many things about the Nephilim, that they had technologies that they weren't even people, but people that day might not have had, so they were even advanced, so that might have even given them an edge as far as travel was concerned.
They had technology. They also had what I believe would be fallen angel technology. Mm-hmm. In other words, when we look at, and I sent you some pictures, but I'll send you others, specifically Sacsayhuaman, I want to talk about that. That is about 12,000 feet above sea level near Cusco, Peru, high up in the Andes. I was there. We talked about this extensively in Watcher 6. These are very, very, very large stones. Some of them weighing over 120 tons. The quarry is 40 miles away. The Inca only have a llama as a beast of burden, which can carry about 20 pounds. So 30 pounds maybe? Let's go to 50 pounds. That's not going to fly. You're not going to get 2,000 llamas pulling up 120-ton stones to Sacsayhuaman.
That's right. What kind of elevation are we talking about from the quarry up to the top of the point? You said it's a 12,000.
Well, it's about a 2,000 difference in height, essentially. I want to show you this one picture. This is the center to the book On the Trail of a Nephilim 1. This will give you an idea. And I'll send you a JPEG, which is better obviously. But these rocks are polygonal. In other words, they're multi-shaped. They're not like little square rocks. And every rock that is used is shaped differently. And yet all the rocks fit. All these huge, when I say rocks, people think this, all these megalithic stones, because these are huge boulders, are shaped. And you can't put a human hair. You can't put like a business card like this. You can't put that in the crack between the stones. It's unbelievable. And it begs the question, what technology? Well, that's the deal. What technology was it used, which was used thousands of years ago, which has been lost to us today? Archaeologists look at this, and all they can come up with is, well, the technology that was used, LA, was somehow disappeared over time, and we don't know how they did it. Well, isn't that interesting? Because they refuse to look at a supernatural paradigm. This is what I would call fallen angel technology, Nephilim architecture. That's how we've labeled it. And as you can see, I'm very passionate about this. Guess what, guys? It is everywhere.
Well, you've been
Nephilim
there yourself.
Architecture is everywhere.
LA, you've been there. You've seen them firsthand, right in front of you. You've traveled the world. One of the things I didn't say when I introduced you is you've traveled the world. You've been there and seen these things yourself.
Yeah, it's one thing to look at a picture. It's another thing to stand at Saxe Ramon or Oet and Tombo and look at, just check that out. Just look at that. Look at the stones, the way they're placed together. I mean, you can't, and you remember, these stones are andesite in the wall in Saxe Ramon, Mohs hardness of about 7, and all they've got in the Neolithic is copper chisels. A copper chisel can't, no matter what you do to it, can't sit there and go tink, 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 tink. It'll bend, it'll break, and it's like, okay, guys, let's not even use copper chisels, all right? Let's use metal chisels. Go for it. Just show me how it was done. And they can't. Well, throw the copper chisels out. You could take, in modernity, diamond saws and drills and all this other stuff. A person would be hard-pressed to create the wall that we see in Saxe Ramon, and yet it's there. And guess what? There's not one glyph on that wall. There's no writing on the wall. There's no, hey, we built this. There's nothing like that. And that is really interesting because surely if a human being did it, King so-and-so built this wall in, the fourth year of his reign, blah, 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 blah. That's not what we see. It's incredibly enigmatic.
Wow. Well, LA, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we want to get more into the book. You talk about in the book about here in the United States, the Native Americans have a lot of oral traditions that talk about these, and it's not just one tribe, it's many tribes.
Yes, it is, absolutely.
We'll be right back with L.A. Marzulli. Stay tuned.
Placed into the very center of the Bible is the book of Psalms. It's a book filled with praise, prayer, promise, and deliverance. Psalm 33:7 says of God, "You are my hiding place. You shall preserve me from trouble. You shall surround me with songs of deliverance." Our newest Psalm CD, Prayer and Promise, is now available. Listen as I read a collection of Psalms along with the beautiful piano accompaniment of Jean DeVries. This is the third and final addition to our collection. For your copy of our newest Psalm CD called Prayer and Promise, please send a suggested gift of $15 or more and ask for your copy. If you would like a complete set of all 3 CDs, please ask for the Psalm Triple Set for a suggested gift of $30 or more. Contact us today.
Welcome back to Prophecy Times. We have our special guest today, L.A. Marzulli. Kyle, you had a question for L.A.
Yeah, L.A., I wanted to specifically talk and go back to Genesis 6 in the verse where it says, the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. Naturally, reading that, sons of God, I feel like I'm a son of God, but it's almost the interpretation, because we look at these Nephilim as sort of a hybrid, and you've mentioned earlier in the program as fallen angels. Can you kind of touch on that, and what is that, and what are we reading?
Well, the early church fathers, first of all, believed that the sons of God were, in fact, the B'nai Ha-Elohim, which is used again in Job and elsewhere through Scripture, which always refers to the angelic host. In the 4th century, when Augustine and the crew came in, all this was changed, and it was sort of sanitized and cleaned up. Well, that really didn't happen. It became what is known as the Subtype Theory, which is still actually being promulgated in most seminaries today. And the Subtype Theory basically says that the sons of God were the righteous sons of Seth, and the daughters of men were somehow the hoochie mamas of Cain. But that's not what the text says at all. And that is, as my mentor, my late mentor, Dr. I.D.E. Thomas, that is torturing the text. The text says very plainly who is here. But also, when we skip over to Jude, we read, the angels left their first estate. Whoa! What does that mean? And it says, in like manner, Sodom and Gomorrah going after strange flesh. In other words, those two sentences are connected linguistically. In other words, the events, in my opinion, what happened with the angels leaving in their first estate happened again at Sodom and Gomorrah. Look, the critics will sit there and say, oh, that can't possibly happen. Angels are sexless because it says in Matthew, it'll be like the angels, given in marriage or not given in marriage. Yeah, I get it. So that let's look, we're all adults here, and I can poke fun at this, and I'm going to poke fun at this, okay? So if we're all sexless and we don't, not given in marriage in heaven, I get it. So when we get up there, they basically airbrush everybody's private parts out, right? Oh, don't need those here anymore. Baloney. It doesn't mean we're sexless. It just means we're not given in marriage. Because in eternity, why would you marry anyone? You're not procreating anymore. And I don't know how any of that stuff works. All I know is that the fallen angels, and look, the Book of Enoch, controversial book. Well, we can't use that because it's not in the Bible. Well, excuse me, the Book of Enoch actually was in the very first edition of the King James Bible. It was the Apocrypha, which was included in the King James. So all the King James people out there, you got to get off your high horse and do a little bit of research. The Book of Enoch was in the Apocrypha. I'm not saying it's scripture, okay? But it's found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's quoted over 70 times in the Tanakh. It's referenced a couple of times in the New Testament. Surely we can appreciate its historicity. And what the Book of Enoch says is that Genesis 6 account, it amplifies it. Instead of saying the sons of God, it just basically says quite openly, the angels of heaven saw the women of earth, and they were beautiful, and they went after them. And there's another reason for this, and it goes back into the protocols of this heavenly war between the Most High God and the fallen cherub. The fallen cherub knows that, oh, Messiah is going to be born. All I need to do to stop this is mess with the DNA. Messiah can't be born from a bloodline which is impure. Dink! And that's what it's about. And that's why later when we get down to Noah, and it says, but Noah is pure in all his generations. M.R.D. Hahn wrote this book, which I quote in my book, The Cosmic Chess Match, that scripture is not talking that Noah was somehow perfect and sinless. No, it's talking about his genealogy, his genetics, in a term we would use in modernity. His DNA was intact, his genetics were intact. And here's the deal, and we need to address this because some folks are out there trying to say that one of Noah's wives was somehow a Nephilim, and that was responsible for the second incursion. In my opinion, that goes against the character of the Most High God. He's going to destroy the world, and yet somehow miss Ham's wife on the ark. I don't buy it, and this is why. Twice, there's a vetting process from the Most High God who says, Noah, you, your wife, your sons, and your sons' wives. Now, he says it in two different places. That is a vetting process. Was Ham messed up? Absolutely. Was the whole line of Ham messed up? Absolutely. Is the fallen one still on the earth and running around? Absolutely. Why is it so hard for people to understand that there are multiple incursions? Why is it so hard to understand that Ham's line got all screwed up and the whispering may have started in the ark or before then? We don't know when, but everybody on the ark was okay. And then only after that, the fallen angels came back and started doing the same nonsense that they were doing in Genesis 6. And here's the rub. Why does the Most High God allow it? I don't have a clue, except that we're in this heavenly war, and it's very legalistic. Ever wonder about the law? And I'm going to throw this out. This is a first, something I've been just toying with. And I know I'm going to get tons of fan mail on this one, right? The law, who can live by the law? Nobody can live by the law of Moses. Everyone breaks it. We can't do it. It's legalistic, isn't it? Is the law good? Yeah, it is. But then you get some really weird stuff in the law. I mean, it's like bizarro stuff. You can't eat this, but you can eat this. And then later on, it's all changed. Is it possible that this is part of the protocol that was established? In other words, I don't know. But when all this came down, was there like a meeting, let's say, just like that meeting in Genesis 3, where the Most High God and sitting down with the fallen one, and these protocols of this match are laid out on the table. And the fallen one is saying, well, in order for the Messiah, he has to live up to this. He's dictating what Messiah has to live up to. I don't know. And I realize, oh, that's blasphemy. Like, no, I'm not saying it happened. I'm just saying the law is a weird deal. And once Jesus comes and fulfills the law, everything shifts. Everything changes. It's just, look, all I'm trying to say is this. As human beings, we all see through a glass very darkly. And I don't pretend to understand what the protocols of the heavenly realm are about. I find them at best mind-blowing and mind-boggling. Hope that answers your question.
It did very well. Thank you.
All right. Well, you had talked about the Nephilim. They took off. They traveled. One of the places they came to was here in the United States.
Yeah, we believe that they hopped on boats. No, we do. We have evidence all over the United States, South America. Look, this is on the trail, volume 3, which is I'm working on now. How is it that cultures show up in the United States? They're called the Woodland Cultures or the Hopewell, not their real name. No one knows where these people came from. No one knows where the technology came from to build the Great Circle Mound in Ohio, which corresponded to the Octagon Mound in Ohio, which had astronomical alignments. No one knows who built America's Stonehenge in New Hampshire, which I talked about in Volume 1. No one really knows who built Cahokia outside of St. Louis, the largest mound in the Americas. I mean, the thing is huge. Where does the technology arrive from? When you go down to a place in Peru, 3 hours outside of Lima, we wind up in a place called Corral. And it's the oldest city in the Americas. It's well over 5,000 years old. And the technology there, I've been there, I've seen it, I walked the grounds. The technology all arrives at once. You're looking at advanced mathematics, engineering, architecture, astral alignments, knowledge of precession, knowledge of the equinoxes, all this. It's all there. Where does it come from? You know, there's no culture which pre-exists this culture. In other words, you don't see these guys going, well, we might try to build a pyramid. I'm not sure what a pyramid is, but it maybe looks something like this. We don't see that. It's like, bam, all of a sudden the pyramidal shape just shows up. It's like, are you kidding me? Where does this come from? And it's like, the archaeologists sit there and scratch their head and go, well, it just seems like, people, I don't really know. And they really don't know. But because it holds to the Darwinian paradigm, which insists that that people didn't travel across the oceans, that all this stuff just happened over, millions of years and blah, blah, blah. We're saying, wait a minute, no. This all points back to the biblical narrative that the Nephilim were on the earth. There is a supernatural realm, that the fallen angelic host of heaven are giving this information to humans. They want to be worshipped. And that's what my work is about. It connects the dots on a global level and shows that it's just not one isolated location. It's here in the Americas, and we showed this in On the Trail of the Nephilim Volume 2. And so out of this cache of records, which I was able to look at, there was a photograph, and this is what we call pay dirt, no pun intended. This shows Ralph Glidden standing in a recently excavated grave, and in front of him is a very large skeleton in situ, meaning that the skeleton is not a disarticulated bone pile. It was uncovered in exactly the same way it was laid to rest in this grave. What intrigued me was this did not look normal to me at all. This looked like, wow, we've got photographic evidence of a giant. And I was able to give that photograph to actually 4 independent researchers. There was no collusion between any of them, at least until they gave me all the information. Then I introduced them to each other and they talked about their findings. Out of the 4 people, 3 of them made good on their work. They used their computers with different computer programs to analyze the photograph based on Ralph Glidden's height of 5 foot 8 inches. All 3 of them placed the skeleton in front of Ralph Glidden at around 9 feet. So we've got, it's in my as far as I know, it's really the first authentic vetted photograph of what we hear about of these giants all over the Americas that I've been able to find, or any other researcher for that matter. There's a lot of hoaxes out there and a lot of nonsense. This was vetted by 3 different researchers and showed that this skeleton in front of Ralph Glidden was around 9 feet tall.
And these researchers, it was a blind study, so they didn't really have anything in the game themselves. You just presented it to them. They took the information. It was purely information, correct? For them?
Well, there was no collusion between any of them. Mm-hmm. All I did was I sent them the photograph. I said, Ralph Glidden is 5 foot 8 inches. Can you extrapolate the height of the articulated skeleton based on that? And it's amazing, they took the distance and the height of Glidden and the perspective where the camera was. I mean, it was very extremely scientific, and all 3 of them put it at actually over 9 feet, and we rounded it down to 8.5 feet for the book. I didn't want to become sensational. I could have, 9.5 footer, whoa! And we dumbed it down to 8.5 feet just for error. But we also found other skeletons there, elongated skulls on Catalina. What the heck is that doing there? You see, it goes against the Darwinian paradigm. It goes against the stuff that we were taught. And that's what's at stake here. And what it does do, in my opinion, is it points back to the biblical narrative and vindicates the veracity of the biblical narrative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, if people want to find out more, they want to hear about elongated skulls, and there's a ton more. This is a wonderful book, folks. One of the things that L.A. Had talked about in another interview I saw was inside the middle of the book, there's not a ton of pictures. The pictures are placed throughout the book. It's a very large physical book, and the pictures are brilliant, so you're really going to enjoy it, and there's a ton more information that you're going to get outside of this interview. And I know LA believes this, and we push this too on Prophecy Times. Folks, do your own research. If you're doubting, if you're rolling your eyes, wait a second, step back, look at the information, and chances are you're going to come up with the same conclusions, but do your own research. LA, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. Can you tell people how they can get your book and your other resources?
Yeah, just go to lamarzulli.net. L-A-Marzulli, M-A-R-Z as in zebra, U-L-L-I, lamarzulli.net, and you can avail yourself of all sorts of wonderful resources.
Folks, it's been a pleasure having LA with us today. Just a treasure trove of information. And remember, we are living in prophecy times.
Yep.
Until next time, we'll see you.